Can only be so many, so many, so many. Only one up.
Right, I think everybody's
Ready, you have to turn off your speakers.
Yep.
What's up? For David, is it David? Who's coming over there? Sorry.
Right. I think we're ready to get started. The part I forgot last time is to go ahead and do the roll call today.
I'm Ariel Mendez, him.
Riley.
Megan Perkins, she, her.
Great, we'll move to approval of the November 29th, 2023 meeting minutes.
Move to approve the November 29th, 2023 meeting minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Do we have to do that?
I don't know.
Yes.
Yes. All right, so just a quick housekeeping item that I added to the agenda a little last minute. We do have some procurement code changes that are coming up, so I'm giving you a heads up now that we'll be bringing that before this committee to have a look at. And I've not done this before, so I'm working with Elizabeth to do the proposed changes, and then that'll come to this committee first, correct? That's just kind of a heads up for you.
Okay.
And right now, the code changes are scheduled for March 6th.
For council.
Yeah, for
So
council.
it'll be.
Yeah, and there'll just be some sort of general housekeeping, as the agenda item says, about different approval amounts and clarifying, just making some changes. We haven't done any updates to the procurement code in the 7 years that I've been at the city, so it's just tweaking some things and making some process changes.
Thank you. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 4, which is the Stormwater Master Plan update.
All right. And I just have a financial slide here. I didn't put together a presentation. This is just under consent. So I'm just prepared to kind of talk through, but happy to answer any specific questions you might have. But what this is update to the 2014 Stormwater Master Plan. Some key highlights of what we're going to be looking at here is we do have some new stormwater permitting. So we have a new municipal separate sanitary storm system, an MS4 permit that deals with surface water discharges to the river. That's in addition to our WPCF, that's our permit that controls all of our injections and groundwater controls. Those come with kind of rolling guidelines. So they're programmatic. So it says over the next 5 years, year 1, you have to establish, these types of outreaches and X, Y, and Z. So we're going to be looking at a lot of using the Stormwater Master Plan to help summarize a lot of those requirements and see where we can kind of synergize, if you will, with what our permitting needs are, and then also our planning, typical. But what we're looking at is a 20-year forecast, with 10 and 5-year focus points. The plan is, look at basically our stormwater challenges and, where our nuisance areas and where we have all of our logs of reported complaints and issues, and then establish a capital improvement program to go along with that. Another key highlight that we're going to be looking at in this Stormwater Master Plan that we have not done before is we're going to consider a framework for regional facilities. Right now, stormwater management is pretty much keep what's on your side of the line and deal with it there. And right of way works in the right of way. With the increased densities that we're seeing, encouraged by the state and local, that's becoming more and more challenging to do that. So this master plan is going to look at proposing a kind of rate structure in addition to what we already have here. And then, how that would play with our actual stormwater utility fee.
Does that mean an increase in rates?
It could be that not maybe more
necessarily.
localized. It could be that if you're in a certain area, because
You
we're
pay
going to
more.
construct, instead of having to do all that work, a shared facility, instead of doing it just when you do your site development, it might be something that.
Exactly. It'd be one more tool for the box. So it'd be, just looking at what some, alternatives or advancing, approaches we can do to stormwater management to best fit our change in development that we're seeing locally and
The
throughout the state.
densification and everything.
Exactly.
So ultimately, that could yield lower development costs?
Theoretically, it could mean you have to do less on-site work to manage your own stormwater. If we're allowing them to put it into the right of way where we deal with it.
And there aren't SDCs for stormwater.
Yeah, that's
They're not
correct.
allowed in the state.
They are allowed, we don't have them.
That could be, that could be another mechanism.
STC project?
Sarah has nothing else to do.
First quarter.
What I understand is SDCs are really hard to justify for stormwater because like what we have here, we don't have, you know, with Newport, I think that's one of our biggest steps in having like a centralized trunk system that we're gonna advance up South Opry Butte. But you know, comparing us to the west side, right, where things don't drain like they do here and they're more reliant on these large stormwater trunk mains and systems. Even those locations have a hard time justifying, you know, equity of an SDC. So that's not really something we're, you know, holding a lot of weight towards right now, but I think absolutely that stormwater fee is something that is gonna have to get looked at. Because I think we're charging something like $8 a residence or something now, which
I think it's 5
is
something.
it 5? So, but yeah, all things we plan to address here in the master plan updates.
So in that situation, then we're sharing that fee across the whole community, just like we do now, say the transportation utility fee or other. So new development isn't necessarily paying costs associated with development of that stormwater infrastructure until they've been developed and whoever occupies that pays that utility fee.
Well, except that they're paying the stormwater fee with whatever utility account is already on there, if the property has some development on it. And then, as Ryan said, our current standards are you handle your stormwater on site,
Yeah.
but that's how you're
Right.
addressing your own
You're
impacts.
moving these things off and doing these regional things and it's being driven by.
But that would be a completely different rate structure and agreement. I think it might be comparable to like a reimbursement sewer. I'm gonna fumble on lingo here, but like some type of reimbursement type project. It would be in lieu of that traditional current utility fee that we have.
If I understand what you're saying correctly, you're saying because the stormwater fees are, it's just flat per
We all
utility
pay it,
account.
right?
But the costs associated with providing that vary pretty widely depending on geography and then, as you were mentioning, also density and whether it goes in the right of way or is provided in some other manner. So this is a mismatch in terms of inputs, how it's paid for and how uneven the expenditures are, the needs are.
I guess I just would want to hear more about SDCs as a possible way to do
Sure.
stuff going forward, because if the capital investment front being driven by new development and just like sewer, water, transportation. You generate revenue to pay for capital investments up front from new.
Yeah.
You know, I understand there may be a portion that's existing and we have to allocate it into the
Yeah.
whole.
Yeah,
system.
even now we
Especially
get,
if climate change is going to change the regime and we're going to get a
Yeah.
lot more stormwater flow here.
yeah,
Over time, then.
and we get arguments nowadays from like a certain neighborhood who has no stormwater infrastructure that the city maintains. It's an old neighborhood. It was annexed from the county a long time ago. They're all paying a part of the stormwater fee. So they're like, why are we having to pay a stormwater fee when there's no service being provided to us? Street stormwater. Well, you drive the streets and the streets get flooded if we don't, do things like the Third Street underpass
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So it's an interesting topic, as Austin described.
And I'm glad you brought up the climate change portion. That is gonna get addressed in here. And that's something where, you'll notice we're, right up to our budget with this one. There is some approvable scope in there. Yeah, I think there's like 21,000. That's for ads if we need to. And this was originally close to 700,000. So we negotiated down within our budget. Part of what we removed a little bit was how deep we're going to go with the climate change aspect of this. So the intent here is to, kind of have our first documented step of this may lead to design standard changes. In the background, we've been meeting with the city of Redmond once a month and we're going through COSM, and that's that inner, Central Oregon COC or stormwater manual that's adopted by several municipalities. So the aim is to keep standardization within Central Oregon, at least between us and Redmond, and kind of like that level of effort that we're requiring. But with our budget, and really how far we could get into the weeds with that, design change requirements with climate change and what we think is gonna come as far as being wetter and warmer and all of those things. This is our plan to like first document that need for an adjustment, but not necessarily get to that final adjustment requirement. That makes sense.
Last question on this, anyway. If this were, if the costs associated with providing stormwater were passed on in some form of system development charge, and additionally, if they were structured so that they reflected the actual costs associated with providing that stormwater drainage, so they would be varied across the region, the area. Presumably, an individual developer would see them and make decisions about, well, where do I want to put a new project? Where's the most economically feasible place to build new homes or developments? Since that's not the case, and since the city is essentially the one that is deciding, making that decision, are we also taking that information about where is it really expensive, and how are we incorporating that into where we are, saying this is actually a really priority place to build because it's actually it's cheaper to provide this kind of infrastructure here than it is over here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, and there's a few pieces to that. So I'll try to do my best to answer, and then you let me know if so part of this, we're looking at, we have GSI to come in and do a hydraulic analysis as well. And that kind of dates back, if you recall, in 2014, when we did the last master plan update, we have rules as far as where you can have UICs and where you can have basically groundwater protection areas. And we've done a lot of studies to further that. And we are working with them as part of this to do another evaluation as where the water flows well underground, where infiltration works good. For the most part, our town drains really well, especially on the east side in the basalts, but there's tough layers and there's pumice and there's things that act a little funky and don't always work. So with that'll help provide a map for the public to better understand what solutions for stormwater, in their geographic area would work best. And then from there, right now we say on your private side, any impervious area, you need to collect and maintain that 25-year storm volume. What you see on the west side, right, like what I'm picturing is like in a subdivision, a lot of the times they'll give up a lot. And then they'll have a big detention basin there where all the stormwater will flow to that detention basin because they know they can't just keep it all on site. And so that's what we're looking at with regional facilities is a total option. We wouldn't be requiring it per se, but we don't currently have the configuration to allow that to happen if a developer wanted to do that. And we think there's a lot of benefit that could come with that. But of course, the long-term maintenance and requirements, there's historic problems with HOAs, taking that on to the level of service that it needs. So we'd look for a context where the city would have ownership to maintain that, but then, making sure we're covered, ultimately to.
Yeah, I think the main concern is just whether we're doing things that encourage development in places that are really expensive to provide infrastructure. And since we're the ones making the decision, at least as far as stormwater provision goes, and obviously that's just one piece of the whole infrastructure picture. I just want to be sensitive to basically I don't want to encourage development in places where it's going to be really expensive, especially if we think about, some of the insurance industry problems around the changing climate. Ways to incorporate that information, that concern seems especially important.
Yeah, I'll just to supplement that, it'll have to be another lens that a developer will look through now. They can't do it today, right? The polishes can't say, okay, we want to go do this thing. And we're like, sorry, you have to build a VW bug size hole in the backyard of that house to handle the stormwater. And then it gets covered up the day somebody moves in. So it'll be another lens that they'll look through, but yeah, today, the geology and the drainage has very little impact on where people decide to go. It's just, they figure it out. It's not one of the top priorities and when they decide to develop places,
Yeah.
Did you say this was on consent?
Yeah.
Think anyone's gonna want to pull it?
I just feel like it's the first time I've considered it, and I was like, wow,
I know.
a lot of questions, but. Yeah,
What do you think?
I mean, this number is allowed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
under a million is kind of our threshold. Just the other items that are happening on the 17th include SDCs, the right of way code.
And that's it.
Just a few others.
Yeah.
Sure, it's large.
It was these two on consent right now and then just right away code.
Sorry, Michael.
SEC code.
Getting his life.
Is something going on the right?
These issues on me as a motion,
Mhm.
but it's under a million. I mean, it could be consent.
I think
Assume that's
it's
council.
okay, especially because this is about the update to the.
Yeah, it's just an
This is a planning effort, yeah.
Conceptual. Okay, I was just curious.
I will real quick, just know, we scratched it off of this LCRB, but there is a collection system master plan coming. That's gonna be something that would probably be more of that open discussion that's gonna be on the regular agenda.
February, probably.
I'm hoping, yeah, if we can negotiate that down.
And I guess the last thing I forgot to mention that I think is pretty exciting with this is, we're looking, if you guys are aware of, between Riverbend Park, there was just that big, restoration effort where, Upper Deschutes Water Council did that. Looking at more appropriate native, river landscaping, and seeing how we can really align with Bend Parks and Rec and the Deschutes River Council, Upper Deschutes.
Watershed.
Mhm, yeah.
The DRC, I was getting crossed, but that would be an effort in here as well, is just trying to better standardize like what we want a riverfront to look like. And I think that's a real kind of a champion project that we're gonna be looking at. So. All right.
If there are any other questions on that, we'll move on to the second agenda item. Or actually the fifth, pardon me. And that's the Riverfront Design Engineering Services Agreement.
And I misspoke. This is not on consent. So right now, the only thing on consent is the stormwater. Yeah.
And the stormwater fee, by the way, is $7, not $5. So I just wanted to correct that.
Ah.
$7.09.
Excited about this project. I'll kick it off here and turn it over to Brad. Unique project with some unique challenges and opportunities, I think. Some history here. For those that don't know, Ben Parks and Rec started an effort back like 2017. Looked at some design alternatives, really had a lot of public outreach in that area. It became increasingly obvious to them that this project is way more about that.
Yeah.
This is a missing link, the Deschutes River Trail opportunity in that area with Colorado Crossing and the Gilchrist Crossing, the Drake Crossing and Galveston. Like it's one of the 4 main crossings of the river right there. So definitely want to make some improvements, but they found with utilities and franchise utility conflicts and there's stormwater, just a lot going on down there. So we are collaborating with Ben Parks and Rec to take the lead with the project, thanks to support from the MPO with some funds. The scope was challenging. Brad's done a good job of trying to refine this down to where we can work within our design budget. But the idea is get a full design on the shelf, kind of shovel ready, if you will, on the shelf project to go after funding opportunities, grants, and try to get some construction funds for this identified in the near future. Turn over to Brad.
Alrighty, this is a draft presentation for council on 17th, so feel free to critique if there's anything again. All right, so just starting on the project overview here with Riverfront Street. We're all familiar, I'm sure, but just a quick big picture view here. So Riverfront Streets, you can see its location relative to downtown, the Old Mill District, and First Street Rapids. Just zooming in here a bit. So First Street or Riverfront Street runs parallel to the Deschutes River. And it's located between Drake Park to the north, to the north, and Miller's Landing Park to the south. And this is actually one of the last remaining gaps in the Deschutes River Trail. And it's extremely popular with pedestrians and cyclists. Additionally, it is a planned low-stress network segment in the City of Bend's transportation system plan. But unfortunately, the current primary route of travel for all users is right in the roadway due to the existing conditions. So talking about the existing conditions here, some of the visual things you can see in these images. So we've got a two-way street. It's a narrow 40-foot right of way. The asphalt is failing and it's only a 24-foot width curb to curb. There's additionally a 4-foot existing sidewalk that's mostly damaged, and there's a number of locations where it's even less than 4 feet. And then there's also an existing landscape strip, approximately 4 feet, a little less in some locations as well, dominated by existing utilities. And then there's also a few things that you can't necessarily see in these images that should be noted with the existing conditions. So our utility department noted that the existing water main needs to be replaced, and our stormwater facilities just collect water and they daylight directly to the Deschutes River, which is obviously not our trust. So diving into our project background. So some of these images here are representative of some of the work that, as David was mentioning, Ben Parks and Rec had done previously. So in 2014, they started an effort to look at filling in this last remaining gap in their trail network of the Deschutes River Trail, where they considered multiple different design alternatives. And they ended up calling it quits around 2017 when they realized this is just a lot more complex than they had originally intended. So the city, fast forward till now, and the city and BPRD have agreed to collaborate on Riverfront Street to complete the missing trail segment, as well as upgrade the failing pavement, address the utility and stormwater upgrades. Through an intergovernmental agreement, funding has been allocated for design, and both parties will share costs equally on the design effort here. And then both parties have also agreed to seek construction funding through grants and possibly other means.
Or could you say the cost sharing for the design is equal?
Correct.
What's the cost sharing like for the construction?
So the intergovernmental agreement has only committed both parties to design as far as funding. So construction is still one of those that neither party.
That's okay. Pick the easy, low hanging fruit first.
We heard through some direct feedback from their executive director that they did not want to spend any money from the park budget on construction, only grants.
With that said, if I may add to that, so now we're getting a little bit into the weeds, but it's worth mentioning. So they have committed just over $700,000 to the project, but design, we both have 350 some odd, 300.
I think 340.
340, I was gonna say, I don't remember the exact number, but it's just under 350. So they have a remaining, almost 350, which is already committed to this project. So that would be, you are correct there as far as they don't want to contribute any additional dollars, but as of right now, they have roughly 350-ish that would be contributed to construction already identified for the project.
Those decisions are made.
And then just jumping into the formal project objectives here. And so the first one is like the main thing that allowed the intergovernmental agreement between Ben Parks and Rec and the city, and that's to provide a multi-use trail for people walking and biking that connects the missing segments of the Deschutes River Trail. Rebuild Riverfront Street to address the failing pavement conditions, replace existing water main and relocate services as necessary, upgrade existing stormwater system to include pretreatment as well. Improve the transition from Riverfront Street to the trail connection at Miller's Landing Park and the Greenway crossing at Gilchrist Avenue. And lastly, provide parking on one side of Riverfront Street because everyone likes their parking, of course. Project details, jumping in this real quick. So the contract we'll be looking to bring to council on the 17th is with Harper Huff, Peterson Regelis, in the amount of $683,684.85. And project timeline here. So data collection, which is largely a survey effort out there. We're looking to start that as soon as next month and wrap it up by springtime. Shortly after that, we'll dive into the alternatives analysis. So this is a good opportunity just to quickly kind of lay out what exactly the process of this project is. So we'll collect data first as the design consultant, and then we have an alternatives analysis, which is similar to what Ben Parks and Rec did. So we don't know exactly what we want to do design wise on the street, but we have some ideas. I mean, we're kind of limited with space, so there's only so many things we can do. So the alternatives analysis will run from spring through summer of this year. And we're going to have, in the contract, we have the opportunity for considerations of 3 separate design alternatives. And this is where our biggest public outreach effort will be. So we'll be working with the local residents there and honing in on what everyone will kind of get on the same page. What is the best design? And we consider roughly a 4th design alternative. It may incorporate multiple elements of the 3 different design alternatives. Once we've completed the design alternative analysis process, then we'll jump into utility coordination and the actual design of Riverfront Street, which will take approximately a year. So the summer of this year through the summer of next year. And then just to reemphasize, I believe David mentioned already, this project will be fully managed by the city, but Ben Parks and Rec will assist the city with public outreach, and then I'll also provide input during the design.
Build on what they've done.
Correct.
Maybe outreach and
In a perfect world, construction would happen till 26, right? The design's all the way through 25.
So they, in our, I didn't include that in here just because this is just the, we're presenting for the design, but the design consultant has factored in, let's see in their schedule here. I just want to make sure I get this accurate for you. So
And just to confirm, Brad's looking that up, but there is no construction funding for this project.
Yeah, at this point.
correct, yeah, it would be 2026. And that, I think the timing makes sense. If we're going to seek grants with this, usually having a design ready to seek grants would be ideal. So yeah, that's what we could.
So one of the goals, I think, of this project in previous iterations was to really prioritize it as a trail.
Yeah.
And while still maintaining access for residents and their guests and the people, I mean, there's a lot of short-term rental that live there. So access for vehicles is important, but there's concern about cut-through traffic or inadvertent traffic that, people don't realize, oh, this is actually not a great street to drive on. Is there the opportunity to do something cheap and quick in the interim period that is just focused on traffic flow, that doesn't change the built environment, but just makes it easier to continue using the street for people who aren't driving?
That's interesting.
So for example, like restrict, make
Like a one way.
I would say once we get through that alternative analysis in spring and summer, if that
Yeah.
desired, I'll call it, or selected alternative was one way, because I think that's intriguing because it opens up real estate for the active transportation that is not in the street with the vehicle, but still it's that balance, right, of allowing some folks some access to the home, work from rental. But if we get down that path and want to make some changes temporarily with some modal filters or that type of thing for one way, that we can definitely look at that.
In our department too, we have the capacity, to install some of our own signs as well. So if in order to do that, if we need to have like do not enter signs, because it's a one way, I think it's not like we have to have a separate project established just to do what you're describing, which is, something in the interim.
Yeah, how does that work when you turn something into a one way? Do you have to like ease people into it?
Do some public outreach.
Yeah.
and,
Okay.
There's some public outreach and then, signage and the day it's changing.
Yeah, exactly.
Variable message boards, notification in advance
Yeah.
on this day. Yeah. We would want to be careful.
People stand there going.
In addition, I mean, definitely not part of the public outreach effort, but part of our contract with the design consultant is they're also going to look at like the traffic flows in the area. We don't want to change a traffic pattern without putting considerable thought into does it work? What would that look like? So we definitely want to make sure we cover all those.
We were thinking a regular item on this, like we were discussing, consent, preference.
I mean, it
Direction
sounds like
from
it
council.
would be an
Right.
important part of the outreach to let people know
Yeah.
they were going to be discussing that.
Show them
Thank you.
that bad PCI. They know what.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I should have pulled the picture a little bit. Yeah.
Well, it's like with the, when you want to put in. Yeah, sorry.
are all the details, you know, the figures they have spray painted on the street leading up, are those going back into? And they're like little Bigfoots and. kinds of
Oh, yeah,
animals
somebody's
spray
gotten
painted.
creative with.
Yeah.
With
Street art.
Street art.
Yeah.
If you've taken a look, there's Bigfoot and then there's other,
There's a lot of them. There's all kinds of neat little animals and stuff.
yeah. Scoot, yeah. Thank you, Brad.
Any other questions on that
Yeah.
one? Okay. Well, I think with that, we are adjourned.
Whoa.
Oh, thanks for that.
3-minute meeting, way to go.